Quick question for you. What do this pigment, Queen Elizabeth I, cosmetics, the wives of samurai, cow patties, and these famous paintings all have in common? Lead white. A pigment so powerful and so dangerous, it may have brought down an entire regime in Japan. You have to hear the story behind lead white. When you think of white, you are probably thinking of titanium white. This was first mass-produced starting in 1916, and by the end of World War II, 80% of the world was using it. From tennis court lines to toothpaste, it was everywhere. But before that, it was all about that lead white.
All about that lead, lead white. Lead white.
Lead white was first mentioned in the 4th century BCE. White has a deep history, one often associated with power and money. People literally would wrap themselves in white to show off how wealthy they were. In order for fabrics like wool or cotton to become brilliantly white, they have to be highly processed, which takes a lot of time and money. Then, you need to be rich enough to hire the staff who could keep these fabrics brilliant white. In ancient Rome, whites were placed in large tubs containing aged urine. You heard me right, urine. And then barefoot workers stomped on them. Who wants that part-time job?
You know, it really is a great part-time job, so long as you can get past the smell. Yeah!
It's not just clothes, though. Think about all the places you see white, which is often seen as positive or pure. Lab coats, religious symbols like a white dove, tablecloths, and even our electronic devices. Interestingly, Johnny Ive at Apple had to convince Steve Jobs to use white on products due to its social power. Well, it's actually pale gray, but whatever. But before we had a safe alternative like titanium white, there was only one white that was inexpensive, brilliant in color, and had extreme longevity. That's right, lead white. As with any cheap alternative in life, there is always a catch. A big, toxic catch in this case. Lead white at its base is simply lead carbonate with a crystalline molecular structure. How it is made is pretty much insane. Step 1, strips of lead were placed in a compartment within a specifically designed clay pot that was divided into 2 parts. Step 2, after adding the lead, you would pour vinegar into the other half of the pot. Next, many of these pots would be surrounded by animal dung, more likely cow dung, and then placed inside a shed-like structure with a tightly fitting door. These pots would be left there for 30 days. Inside the shed and then inside these pots, a chemical reaction is happening. Fumes from the vinegar reacted with the lead, forming lead acetate. During this fermentation process, CO2 or carbon dioxide is produced, which in turn reacts with the lead acetate, turning it into a carbonate. Fast forward 30 days, some poor person was sent into the shed to get these pieces of lead. The smell alone could have killed you. Now each piece of lead was covered in a puff cake-like layer of white lead carbonate, also known as lead white. Next, you can form it into a powder or into patties and then sell it. But it came at a cost. Let's just look at the effects lead white would have on the human body. First, immediate pain to the stomach. Next, acute fever and shortness of breath, vertigo or dizziness, followed by blindness and loss of appetite. Then comes the frequent vomiting and of course extreme weakness of the body. Yes, it was very toxic. But at 1/100th of the cost, people just kept using it. Oh, and not just in paint. In fact, the most dangerous use of lead white may have been in cosmetics. In China and Japan, women were mixing it with rice powder, which made their skin look smooth and pale. The iconic look you think of with the geisha, who loved the way lead white would contrast beautifully with their teeth, which they painted black. Yeah, I'm not kidding. A powder so dangerous, archaeologists believe it may have brought down the 300-year-old Shogun regime in Japan. How did this happen? It has to do with babies. Let me explain. Samurai and their families were buried in large clay pots at local temples. Scholars studied the bones of children 3 and under and found they contained over 120 times the normal amount of lead to cause neurological damage. Insane. Scholars argue that infants who were breastfeeding were ingesting the lead in the mother's milk. Cosmetics were one of the main sources of lead exposure among the samurai class because they were luxuries at the time. With so many in the ruling class suffering from lead poisoning, it may have caused instability in the political system and ultimately caused the collapse of the Shogun. Even Queen Elizabeth I got in on the lead white action. Rumor has it that she had about an inch worth of this stuff on her face when she died. Even after well-publicized deaths in the 19th century, you could still buy cosmetics with lead white in them. As an artist, was it worth using the toxic paint? Well, it was one powerful color that was used in underpaintings because it was so bright and adhered perfectly to the canvas. It was also used to make perfect blue skies and precise skin tones. What's even more crazy is how it can preserve colors for years, even centuries. This is inside a tomb dating back to 357 BC. After 16 centuries in a damp tomb, it still looks amazing. Guess what they used as the primer? Lead white. Thank you so much for watching, and if you could do me one simple free favor, could you please hit that subscribe button and tell somebody else about this channel? Thank you so much. Have an awesome day.